Masculinity is the courage to be who you are. You know, my company and my living philosophy is called Savage and Saint, and that kind of implies this duality between the hard and the soft. And actually, for an individual to reach their highest potential, you need to have a balance of challenge and acceptance.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of SPARTAN Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe De Sena here, CEO and founder of SPARTAN and the Hard Way podcast. I got a special one for you. I always have a special one for you. This is Michael Holt. He is a masculine and vitality expert. Everybody needs a little more masculinity. Everybody needs a little more vitality. This is our guy. Welcome aboard, Michael.
Glad to be here, Joe. Thanks for inviting me.
You're out in California. Have you always lived in California?
Nah, man, I'm from Philly.
You're from Philly.
Yeah.
It's a pretty masculine town.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we would have to define masculinity.
Michael, can you define masculinity?
Nope. That's a tricky one. I don't know that there's a cookie cutter definition for masculinity. And I think when we try to put a label on it, you create this pressure of a whole bunch of young men trying to be something that they're not. Masculinity is being in integrity with your authenticity. And for some people, that's going to mean, different things. I would say the two defining adjectives for a masculine individual would be authenticity and integrity. Who you are and how you present yourself are the same. You're not portraying yourself as some caricature of a big muscle-bound, macho, tough guy who bags a lot of women because somebody told you that that's what a man is. You're also not trying to portray yourself as overly sensitive, or you're not second-guessing your gut, your spine, your intuition. You step out into the world and you are who you are. That's what I would say is masculinity.
As you were speaking, I was thinking you act as you are, right?
And the more you develop yourself, then the more that the way that you act and skillful behavior are the same.
They start to align.
Yeah. And so you're not trying to be anything that you're not. You don't have this weird strategy in your head of I should do this because that would make them think this and blah, blah, blah. It's just, you're just like an arrow that just moves forward.
I picked it up. I was reading Pumping Iron when I was a kid, and I was reading about Arnold Schwarzenegger explaining how he was trying to be somebody he wasn't. But once he started to gain confidence and believe in himself, he had nothing to prove.
Yeah.
And he started to act like, and that really struck me, right? Because that's almost more masculine in many ways, is to not put on an act.
Exactly. That's authenticity. That's integrity. You have nothing to prove to anybody because you prove yourself to yourself. You see the same thing in martial art. A lot of young martial artists whose beard is just coming in have something to prove. They're always walking around like a tough guy. They perceive anything as an insult to them, and they need to correct it because they're not secure in themselves. But the guys who are really, been training a long time and can really confidently jack somebody up, they're the most peaceful, humble. They move slow. They're polite. Masculinity is the courage to be who you are.
And a tough place to grow up?
Nah, not tough. I mean, I grew up in a great neighborhood, suburbs. We didn't struggle. We didn't have a silver spoon. But I think you could characterize it as a tough neighborhood. It was pretty much par for the course that you were going to have a scrap with the kid across the street, that your buddies and his buddies were going to have a scrap. It was just part of the culture. Yeah,
no, I grew up in a similar place in Queens, New York. And I think it makes you better. Do you agree with that?
I wouldn't trade the way I was raised, because good, bad, or otherwise, it created the conditions for me to become who I'm becoming. So I wouldn't trade it.
I worry, and I do battle with a lot of people around me, including my own family. I worry that a soft environment where children grow up in a soft, easy environment, that maybe they don't become what they can become. And you don't want to break people. You don't want it to be so bad and so tough, right, that it breaks people, but maybe you bend them a little bit.
My company and my living philosophy is called Savage and Saint. And that kind of implies this duality between the hard and the soft. And actually, for an individual to reach their highest potential, you need to have a balance of challenge and acceptance. And I think what you're speaking to is maybe a tendency in the modern era where things are not challenging enough. It creates a softness in people, which makes them very fragile, which is not the way to love somebody. Sometimes love means being firm. And that applies to the way you raise your children, but also it applies to how you govern yourself.
Now, I do say, I think you'd agree with this. I do say if this was the 1400s we were living in, I'd say we need a little more saint, maybe a little less savage.
For sure. For sure.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that we have to be honest, Joe, like it's just the way it is that every older man looks at the generation behind him and says, "You're so sweet, you're so soft." So we have to recognize that tendency and know that our perspective may not necessarily be objective. And maybe some of the ways that we were raised or the prevailing norms in the culture when we were coming up, maybe they weren't, so great. So there's always going to be the pendulum swinging from the hard to the soft. And that's just the way it's always going to be. So I don't know. I tried to resist the temptation as I get older to look down my nose at the generation behind me, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. And I do recognize, right, that there's a great book. I don't know if you've read it, but everybody listening should read it. It's called A Message to Garcia. It was written in the 1800s, and it sold 30 million copies back then. And the message was exactly what we're talking about. The author was basically saying, when I try to get kids to do anything these days, they ask me why or what it's about or what are they going to get for it. And I just need somebody to do the fucking job. And, the hero in the book is Rowan, and Rowan finally just says, yeah, I got it. Give me the envelope. I'll get it to where it needs to go. I'll swim and fight off the alligators and run and machete my way through the jungle. And, I think we all love that person, that hero, male or female, Rocky Balboa, Rowan in that case. And so, yes, be careful. Don't become like all our predecessors where we frown upon this next generation and say what a bunch of softies. But also, it's really sexy to be strong and firm, right? And just get after it.
Yeah, it's really attractive to have the capacity to just adhere to the mission, no matter what variables come up in the path, in the way, whether they be external or internal. One of the things I circle back to in my work is that you can go too far in that direction, especially a man who's purposeful and driven. You can go too far in the direction of achieving the mission at all costs, and you can sacrifice some parts of life that really make life worth living. So it's a balancing act.
We see it in the movies, right? We read it in the books where the savage, blows up their relationship at home, doesn't talk to their kids, right? At all costs. And then on the other side, I'm thinking about the movie Heat with De Niro and Pacino.
Great
on
flick.
The other side, right? De Niro's blowing up his relationship. So like we can become such pit bulls that we destroy everything around us at all costs.
And then you achieve the mission, but you're left alone with something that is ultimately not really fulfilling. And the moment you achieve it, you're already thinking about what's the next thing. So that's it. That's the savage, is relentless expansion, improvement in all directions, at all times, always. That's half the equation. The other half is the capacity to find the center in this moment, deeply relax, and literally love yourself and the world exactly as it is right now, not need to change a thing. And when you can do both of those things, you unlock this vitality, this reservoir of balanced, sustainable energy that you can channel into your purpose. But the paradox is it's no longer that important. Achieving the goal is no longer that important because you're giving yourself the thing that you really want, which is freedom, which is always and only available in this moment. Paradoxically, the more you find that internal vibration, the more likely it is that you achieve the things that are meaningful in your life because they're no longer a life or death situation.
Very monk-like.
Yeah, I mean, meditation is, of all the things that I teach and all the lifestyle factors that I leverage in my one-on-one consulting work and in the men's course that I teach, is meditation is the top of the list because that is the training of the mind. Whatever your aspirations, whether to be a better father, a better entrepreneur, your mind is the common denominator in all of those things. And if you can learn to exercise some kind of volition or understanding of your own mind, you can get a lot more done with a lot less struggle.
It really is a paradox, right? Because the very thing we think we need to achieve the goal is blinders and focus and relentlessness.
Mm-hmm.
But those are things you're saying that in some ways hold you back as well, and certainly creates destruction around you.
They can. It depends who you are as an individual and where you are on your path. Some people need to train that muscle of relentless discipline. They need action, accountability. They need to move. Some people, I would guess that you're probably in this category, knowing the little that I know about you and how successful you are. Some people, that muscle of discipline becomes so constantly flexed. Actually, what is required for the next iteration of your growth is to start to relax the discipline, to start to do less, to let go of this white knuckle kind of grip, this importance of getting the thing done, and actually stop and land here in this moment.
Which is a scary place to be because you feel like you're now letting it slip away.
Exactly. And for a high performer like you, and a lot of the high performers that I work with, it's actually a fear. Wait a minute. If I stop, if I relax, if I entertain the notion that what I'm really after is always and only available right here, right now, then what, I'm going to become some new age pussy and sit on the couch and not get anything done because this whip that I've been using to drive myself has actually worked. That's the fear. But the reality is, when you let go of that inner tension of needing something to happen and just land here for a period of time every day as like an ongoing practice, you actually, all of that energy that was tied up in tension and ambition and needing to get something done is now more free flowing, and you get more done with less struggle, with less tension than you ever thought possible. So you have to cultivate discipline. And then at a certain point on your path, you have to start to surrender the discipline. And it's hard to do because you work so hard to build this discipline. I got to give this up too. I've given up so much. Now I got to give up the discipline that I built. Yeah, it's just a constant letting go.
A great analogy would be, my boys wrestle. We have 2 boys and 2 girls as children, and the wrestling is full on 365 every day, training relentlessly. The soccer is crazy. Last night I said to one of my boys, you know what, you should take tomorrow off. That's a hard thing for me to say. There are no days off, but maybe we got to go backwards to go forwards, right? Maybe you got to rest, and that's exactly what you're saying, but more generally in life.
In the Tao Te Ching, I forgot which number, but it says the ancient generals have a saying: rather than advance an inch, it's better to retreat a yard. So sometimes,
I like that.
And you have to be honest with yourself. So for a high performer, what is authentically more edgy? And by edgy, I mean uncomfortable, a little bit scary. To ignore how you feel and press forward into another hard day of work, or to take a day off. When you get to the point that taking a day off is actually legitimately more uncomfortable than pressing forward, then that's the sign from your higher self that your medicine is on the other side of doing less.
Well, the reason I think it's so hard what you're saying is we are pre-wired to do less. And so it's required so much work and discipline to do more. We lean towards like less energy expenditure, right? You wake up in the morning with all these intentions and you find yourself checking social media because your brain subconsciously is like, don't do that stuff. It's too hard. That jumping in that cold river is too hard. Doing those burpees too hard, right? And so I finally figured it out. I'm finally doing this stuff. And now you want me to go backwards.
Yeah, that's where they get you. It's always, your growth is always on the other side of the thing that is authentically uncomfortable. And when you do get to the point, it takes a lot of work to get to the point where relaxing is scarier than pressing forward. But once you're at that point, then it's time to do less.
Yeah, my wife said, I don't like to hug very much. I'm not like a hugger. I'm not soft and mushy. And so growth is on the other side of that. I got to hug more, I guess.
I wish we were in person, bro. I'd give you a big hug right now.
That would be so uncomfortable. Tell the audience out there what they should do on a daily basis, maybe to have some sort of a practice.
Yeah, so I have an online course, an online men's course that I call Masculine Vitality. And in that course, we take 12 weeks to leverage systematically 6 pillars of well-being in order of their importance for your survival. Those 6 are what we spoke to earlier: the practice of meditation, contemplation, prayer, stillness. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I have had the good fortune of being schooled by teachers in meditation who are really about that life. I mentioned earlier, I live in Los Angeles. I could throw a rock right now and it would probably hit a meditation teacher. Everybody's a meditation teacher around here, but very few of them know what the fuck we're talking about, quite honestly. Like I said, I've had the good fortune to be schooled by some real wise elders who frame the practice of meditation as the cultivation of specific skills. It's a skill-based approach. You're training concentration. You're training clarity, the capacity to really feel the information inside of your body and the bodies of those around you. And you're training equanimity, the capacity to accept the moment as it is, exactly as it is, without needing it to be different. That's like stoicism. So that's a big one in my worldview, in my perspective. So the skill-based practice of training your mind. Breathing, establishing functional breathing patterns. Most people don't know how to breathe very well because our bodies are so tight, locked up, tense. We're breathing at like 30% capacity, which is sending a subtle signal to our bodies 24/7 that there's not enough. Something's a little off. So it creates this generalized background anxiety. You think it's all these reasons in the external world, but the reality is if you would just take a deep breath, you calm down. So you train a functional breathing pattern. Furthermore, you can 100% utilize and manipulate your breath and access some pretty transcendent states. And then we're going to look at just the practical daily things of cultivating good sleep hygiene, drinking clean water and enough of it. Eating real food is a big one. Huge. Just eat real food. If you would exclusively eat real food, your life would change in ways that you couldn't even imagine. And then move your body. You don't have to hit a Spartan race. You can. You don't have to set records at the CrossFit gym. You don't have to spar hard. You can do all of those things, but just move in a way that feels good. Sit with your own mind. Breathe well. Sleep well. Drink water, eat real food, and move. It's not a lot of revolutionary information there. It's all very practical. But if you adhere strictly to the practical for long periods of time, that opens up the mystical. So the mystical is none other than just strict adherence to the practical. And by the way, in my view, I'm on a soul mission to share this work and this way of being with dudes who are rough around the edges, like me, like you, guys who would never be caught dead at like a new age spiritual kind of a thing. And so I frame all this work as the revolution. This is the revolution of our times, is to become vitally alive, healthy, happy, and whole. Because sad but true, look around. Go to a sports game or Disney World or anywhere where there's a large population of the
public.
Yeah, people aren't doing so well. I don't want to go too far off tangent, but I would say that powers that be have a vested interest in people not doing so well. Because people,
it's good business.
People who aren't doing so well are easy to manipulate and control. I'm on a mission to create more men who are impossible to coerce, who think for themselves, And that requires being healthy.
The thing is, the reality is what I sell and what you sell are very hard things to sell. They require commitment. They require discipline.
Sure.
They're not flashy. They're not shiny. They don't promise quick results, 5-minute abs.
Sure.
And the rest of the world, everything else we're being sold is, we think, fast way to feeling better, to being happier, to being like, but it's all bullshit, right? Breathe, eat, sleep, move.
Practice. If you want to feel better, practice feeling better. You know, that's a meditative skill, the cultivation of positive states of being. You can do that. We have to be very careful about what we get good at or what we practice, because whatever we practice, we're going to get good at. So the meditation path shows you that, oh, you start to establish what we call metacognition, the capacity to observe your own mind. You might realize that you're practicing a lot of things that aren't actually very wise to be good at. So you can practice things like gratitude, peace, joy, service. It's the warrior path. The meditative path is the warrior path. It's so unfortunate to me that there's this connotation between hippy-dippy, new age, airy-fairy, spiritual, man-bun bullshit and meditation. Because if you look back through the ages, that's the path that the warriors find themselves on. The martial art path and the meditative path are the way. And that's the way I'm walking, and I'm trying to share it with as many people who want to walk it with me.
It resonates with me because so here I was in this neighborhood in Queens, all organized crime. Anybody worth becoming in our mind as children had a Cadillac, had money, had a gun,
Sure.
Right? And my mom finds the warrior path, the meditation, the yoga, the eating healthy. But that was hippy dippy, crunchy, stupid.
Sure, yeah.
Who wants to? I got monks in my living room chanting. I can't even explain it to my friends. It's stupid.
Right.
It is a shame that it got branded the wrong way.
Yeah, it's a more of a quick fix culture,
That's all right.
But and I know that the quick fixes don't last.
They don't last. How do people find you?
I'm on Instagram, Savage and Saint. You could go to my website, savageandsaint.com. That's all available on Instagram. That's probably the best way to connect, and then you'll just see what I'm about. The men's course that I'm putting out we're starting March 4th. It's 12-week course. Registration is now open. So, yeah, if you vibe with anything that you've heard thus far, hit me on the gram, Savage and Saint. Just Google it. I'll pop up.